Welcome to Voices of Care, real stories to inspire, uplift, and unite caregivers, with Maggie Linton and Powell. Enjoy the conversation.
So, Savvy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Listen, let's give me a little bit of your background first. Let's begin with that.
Oh boy, I don't know. Where do I start? When you say background,
Well,
do
you
you mean
know,
as far as being a caregiver or as far as being part of a nonprofit organization, or do you mean my entire life?
both, because that's both of those are you, aren't they? Yeah.
Okay, let's try this.
Okay.
So I consider myself a lifetime caregiver because my duties to my mother began at a very young age. My mother was a Japanese national, and she didn't speak English well. So as I learned in school to speak English, and I came home and taught her everything I learned. So by means of me, she learned to read, write, and speak English. She was very limited at it. And so throughout that sort of put the onus on me to become the caregiver. And so throughout my growing up, I had to make sure that if she needed to write a check, I wrote the check. If she needed to read a recipe, I read the recipe. If she needed anything translated, that was my job. And so I was always looking out for my mother at a very young age. And that went on to even when I was in high school, they didn't know my mother's signature. They knew my version of my mother's signature. So of course, I had all my absences excused. Not that there were a lot, no, but so it was to my advantage sometimes. However, there was always this mindset that I was the one that had to take care of things.
Mhm.
And so when my mother was diagnosed with dementia, and my parents hid it for a long time, she had a mini stroke, and that's how I finally found out about her diagnosis. And she was diagnosed with dementia and then had their mini stroke. And then a week later, my father fell down a flight of 15 stairs and broke 3 ribs. I instantly
Oh my
became caregiver
goodness.
to both of them. So that's kind of how I entered into started with the caregiving world and then entered into chaos of caregiving. And that was 12 years ago.
Now, are you an only child?
I have a brother who is older, and he was not as available. So he wasn't always able to do that. And I think you find that with siblings sometimes. Again, an Asian mom, and I was the daughter. So that, again, that responsibility, that load fell on me. And so I became the one to make myself available and care for my parents. A year and
Right.
a half later, my father had passed with a stroke, and then my mother has now recently passed a week and a half ago.
Uh, okay. So, do you feel, in a sense, any? I know you feel loss, but the I won't say burden, but the loss of responsibility too has to be different for you.
Well, having lived my whole life as a caregiver, and of course, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, and I was a teacher for many years. So, I definitely was in a caregiving role for my students and always being there for them. And I think sometimes we define caregiving incorrectly. Caregiving is so many things, right? And so I've always been in that role. My other half is currently going through cancer right now, and I also have my mother-in-law that lives with us. And so my caregiving role, I think, will always continue. It's
Mhm.
now because of what happened with my parents and how hard it was, how difficult it was. I had to place my mother into care. Let's see, it was about maybe 6 years ago when she finally forgot how to walk and she became non-ambulatory, and her dementia had escalated to a point that I could no longer give her the level of care she needed. So I had no choice. I had to place her in care, and I promised her, of course, like every good daughter, that I would never do that. And when that happened, it was a big adjustment for me. And so, like you were saying, I found myself not in that role literally overnight. And it was very difficult. I actually went into depression, and I felt like I had no purpose. I was suicidal. I thought, what have I done wrong? And I let my mother down. And so I tell people that I went into 9 months of depression and I gave birth to a mission. And I said, no caregiver should ever have to feel this way. And that's when I started my nonprofit organization that cares for caregivers to this day.
That in a sense, you were awakened with the necessity of moving forward with your life.
Yeah.
And saying, it's okay, I'm okay, and I have to move forward for my life.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we are constantly, we all have a purpose in life, and we're constantly put at the threshold of a choice to make that mission, to find our purpose, to find our passion, or to trudge along in life as you have been. And throughout my life, I many times stood at that threshold. And most times I always took the passion mission, but never felt that I found the true mission that I was meant for. And in everything I've done in my life and in my career, I've always put the people first. And so I knew people was part of what I needed to do with my life. And then when Give Me a Break, which is my nonprofit organization, was the epiphany that I had, and that I came to, I have found my true purpose in life is to help those who are caring for others. And that my whole life story was because I was being, taught and learning ways to help those and to help them find joy in their journey.
Yeah. I think the title of your organization, or Give Me a Break, is so true. I kind of became the caretaker for my mom and dad when they both moved out to my state. And, you're trying to please both of them.
Yes.
At the same time, and that can be extremely hard. But talk about some of the lessons that you learned, and also giving yourself a pat on the back saying, I'm okay with where I am. Because that's the hard part, isn't it?
Yes. Well, I will tell you that I never thought in my entire life I would have to learn to change a catheter for my father. That was a big learned lesson. And I say that in all sense of humor. However, you don't realize in your caregiving journey what you will have to face. And you don't even realize what you will need to know. And I think that that's the key to caregiving, is that we don't talk about it enough, and we don't share this knowledge that we learn enough. And that's part of our mission, is to sort of bring caregiving out of the closet, if you will, and start helping people to understand that we have to talk about these things, that we need a care receiving plan. That's one of our, the strategic plan for this past year, and really with fervor over 2026, is to help caregivers to understand that they have to plan for their care receiving, because you're in the situation you are now because nobody planned for it. We plan for retirement, but we don't plan to be taken care of. And so we have an entire workshop that we do now to teach people how to receive care and what they need in place in order to do that with compassion and kindness and with our voice, and still alive and well, even if we lose it. And, I think that there are joys in caregiving as well. You learn so many lessons, you learn so many things, not just about how to care for another person, but how to care for yourself.
Yes.
50% of caregivers will pass before the one that they care for, and that's our national statistic. And mind you, it has not budged in 5 years, and we are working so hard to change that, lower that number. And what happens from that is that we have to take charge of that. We have to control what's ours to control, which is our self-care and wellness, because we are the most important part of the caregiving equation. Without us, the person that we care for doesn't receive care. And so we have to incorporate wellness and self-care into our daily routine, even if it's in moments. And that's something we teach as well to all of our caregivers, is how to practice self-care in a moment. You don't need an hour. I know you don't have an hour to go to a gym. That's okay. We could do it in a 5-minute meditation. We can do it in a 1-minute breathing exercise. And so taking charge of that is on us to do, and we can't wait for anyone to help us with that. We have to incorporate that as part of our caregiving journey.
Yeah. When you started out saying, okay, I see other people walking this path and they're beating themselves up like you were,
Yes.
and you say, okay, let's all get together and talk about what we need in order to survive. That was really a hard step for you too, wasn't it?
Yes. It was funny when I was going through my journey, and, I had lost my job. I could no longer, do that and care for a mother with dementia, right? And and a father. And so I'd lost my job. I lost my self-confidence. I had gotten overweight because I wasn't taking care of myself and eating well. I was sickly. And so when all things happened and changed, I became so depressed and so isolated that I didn't know where to turn or what to do. And so I tried several times to find a support group or to get help or to have somebody just listen. And, you also, when you lose your job, don't have a lot of finances. So it's not like you could just, oh, I'll call my, psychiatrist, or I'll just go to you can't do that. And it's
Mhm.
hard to do also because you have a sense of pride within you, thinking that you're supposed to be able to do this. So one of the foundations of starting Give Me a Break was that we immediately, and we're going into our 6th year of doing support sessions, and we have online support sessions for caregivers, and we meet every week. It's not a monthly, it's not a bi-monthly or a bi-weekly. We meet every week. And this group of caregivers, which has ebbed and flowed over the past years, has saved my life, and I know has saved theirs as well. And so, I'm one of those that if I can't find it, I'm just going to start it myself. And I did.
Create it, yeah.
And, and it did it. It literally saved me. Knowing that I had to lead these groups and do the research to help them to be better made me better, and it gave me
Mhm.
purpose. And so, our group is a wonderful thing and everyone's welcome to it. However, if you're not in Hawaii and you can't always log in, by all means, find one. And if you can't find one, tell me and I'll help you find one. Because being part of a support community is so important, and having a safe space is everything. And I think that that's probably how I was able to even break the isolation. And now the group that we have is literally just surviving because of it. And their caregiving has changed, and they're finding joy in moments, and they're learning to care for themselves, and knowing that that's all right, I think is so important.
Um, and you were talking, you said you're a mother, grandmother now, and things like that. Are you finding any help in that way too? Or is it strictly with the organization? Do they
It's
understand the path that you've been on?
well, my grandmother passed from dementia at 104. She was
Whoa.
2 weeks to her 105th birthday, and she passed with Lewy body dementia. And my mother, who just passed, actually, it's been 2 weeks now, and she passed with Lewy body dementia. My mother had lost her ability to recognize who I was about 6 years ago. So she did not know what I'm doing now. She may now know that she's
Mhm.
passed on and looking down saying, "You go,
Yeah.
girl." But so I'm actually a candidate now, right? So it's hereditary. So
Mhm.
I'm doing everything I can now to keep my brain active, to do all the things I need to educate and help others and educate myself in ways to not get in that position. And, and I'm going to stress again is that my parents had no plan. Like everybody else, they had a will.